is a little better up here, but this new pulpit, much more space. It's not appear as if it's falling down like that one. So I want to thank the Kitchener Brethren because they donated it to us. So it's ours now, right? Yeah, firm and nice. It's good to see you all again. I wasn't supposed to be here today, but Brother Courtney is not well, so I told him rather than him coughing and sneezing up here, I'll just come and talk instead. I'm sure we're all looking forward to the high holy days beginning the fall season, beginning next Sabbath, Friday at least, at sunset when we usher in the Feast of Trumpets. So I'm going to speak in that vein today, the coming of Messiah. From the very instant that Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden, humanity was basically on its own. They gave up or paved the way for us to inherit a path filled with struggle. By the sweat of your brow, you shall eat bread, God told them. But we worship a sovereign God. And although he remains sovereign, he has allowed humanity to establish its own political systems, social systems, economic systems, to govern himself. So it's like a hands-off. Now that before you is a life of struggle, do it on your own. So this fallout brought humanity to start governing itself. And so they established political systems, social systems, and so on, in order to survive as a species. And we see the first ambitious step was on an ungodly path. Sometimes you wish you could get into the minds of the people in Babel, where the Tower of Babel started, to see what they were thinking, that they could do it on their own. After the first murder in Genesis 4:16, we are told, and Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east side of Eden. And Genesis 7, verse 17 relates that after arriving in the land of Nod, Cain's wife bore him a son, Enoch, in whose name he built the first city. So it appears as if the first city ever built was in the land of Nod. We don't know much about this city of Enoch, but we do know that Enoch, we all know the history and his work for God, and he's one of the faithful listed in Hebrews 11. But after the families of Noah, or the family rather of Noah and their generations multiply, we are told in Genesis 10:32 that they were divided into different nations. So after God said, go out and multiply, what you see happening was different nations were being formed. Some went east, some went north, some went south. I guess they would have gone to the cold places, right? And so on. Well, there was this one particular nation that seemed to have stood out among them. And during the course of human history, that nation would devise a system that would pave the way for later generations to adopt. And the approach was from both the political standpoint, the social standpoint, and maybe to the economic standpoint too. We don't know too much about that. But culturally, yes, it was there. And that system has so much influence from that time to our modern world that today we are still under the influence of that system. And it's what we term the Babylonian system. It's still has its effect on us today. It still influences political thought, decisions, and even religious decisions or religious teachings rather. So it's no wonder in Revelation 14, God is going to intervene to put an end to that system, and we covered that during our Bible study on the book of Revelation. Genesis 11:4, and they said, "Go, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach into heaven or unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered upon the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower with the children of men builded. And the Lord said, "Behold, the people is one," or the people are one. That's a grammatical. The people are one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. And we're seeing some parallels here when we think of this AI business going around, because the creators of this technology said, you know what, we don't know where this is going. It's beyond our imagination. So we're seeing some parallel of the Bible, what began here. But God said, "Go, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So you know the story, they were scattered. Therefore, the name of it is called Babel. Back in Genesis 10, we are told about Nimrod, the son of Cush, described as a mighty hunter before God. But he was more than a hunter as well. And there seemed to have been, along the way, some kind of interaction or blending or copying or whatever in terms of the systems that were being established. Because Nimrod was really seen more than a hunter. The Bible doesn't give much, but there's extra biblical stories about Nimrod and the influence he had on people, because one of the first things he did was make a fortified city. In other words, he built an encampment or towering walls around this area to protect people from wild beasts, and even wars and so on. So he was looked upon as a kind of God. And so there was a kind of cult following with him. All kind of different stories. You don't know which one is true. Some say he married his mother, Semiramis. Semiramis planted an evergreen tree at his tomb, and that is where this cult worship of tree worship began, because each time people saw this evergreen tree, they would be reminded of Nimrod and the mighty works that he did. So we see the beginning or the genesis of some very practices that we see today, because guess what? People still have Christmas tree in their homes, right? So he became so influential, this Nimrod. And so it's tied into all this Babylonian system, Mystery Babylon the Great, and so on. So the Tower of Babel was the world's first skyscraper. It was tall for their time, for their technology. So the skyscrapers, even the skyscrapers that you see around today, they're nothing new. The Tower of Babel was the first, very first. It is widely believed that it eventually took on the name Babylon, which became the most famous city from ancient Mesopotamia, whose ruins lie in modern Iraq, some 59 miles south of Baghdad. So the name is derived from Be'il or Baalim, which is, in the Akkadian language of the time, it meant gate of God. That's what it means, gate of God, whatever God, surely not the God of the Bible. So, whether Nimrod and those who follow him through millennia thought they were doing something right, at least in their eyes. These annoying pop-ups here, I didn't know I would be getting them on this platform. Yes, that they thought probably they would be doing something wrong, right rather, but they didn't know what they were getting into. They wouldn't know that thousands of years later, we, humanity, at this time, would be being still influenced by what happened back then. So God, in his wisdom, knew all of this. And that is why we're told in Genesis 49:10 that he would be sending the Shiloh. And who would be the Shiloh? It's earth's rightful ruler. So going way back, God knew it would happen. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff between his feet, until he whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nation shall be his. There's general consensus that Shiloh is none other than Jesus the Christ. So humans started early to try to govern himself. And whatever that governing entailed, sometimes we see situations where God did intervene, as in the history of Israel, and there are other times when he just back off. So for example, Israel said, you know what? The other nations have kings. We want kings too. God said, okay. Get your king and go. And we know the history of that. So we we see that, and nowadays it still goes on too, right? Secular history records that the first king was Alulim, the king of Sumer, who lived around 2900 BC. Somewhere in Mesopotamia, he emerged from. But biblical history, though, records that the first king in Genesis 14:1 was Amraphel, king of Shinar. And Abraham, or Abram at the time, was identified in that region. 1 Samuel 9:11 tells us about Israel's King Saul, yeah? And beginning with the book of Kings, we are told that Israel had 24 kings, including those of the United Monarchy. Some scholars put it at 21, but whatever, we know Israel had kings. And so, some of those kings, last night I was just going through reading some of those. Tyrants, wicked, evil men. For a nation that carried the name Israel, the chosen people of God, where did those people emerge from? Where did those evil people emerge from? You know, going into the temple and putting statues and foreign gods to mock the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Today we still have royalties alive. Whether it's King Charles or, I hear somebody laugh, King Charles or King Juan Carlos of Spain and King this and King that. But guess what? The top 10 monarchs of today, they have a worth of over $120 billion. So they are rich people. And you hear all of these, well, people follow it. All of these stories about Harry and Meghan, people just deep into those things, following all of these, to me, just neither here nor there. These are rich people who live in a different world. And they're not immortal. They're going to die like you and I, just that they probably may get a prettier casket. You know, and dignitaries attend their funerals and so on. That's all is going to happen. And maybe they eat better food than you and I too. And when they get sick, they can go into hospitals that are cordoned off. And when they leave the palace, people just running them down. Can I get a comment on this and can I get a comment on that? But that is nothing, because they're all going to die and go back to the same place where you and I are going. And I want to tell you, saints of God, that in a lot of cases we are better off than them, because they don't even think about the God of heaven. So they're just king in name. They're some of them leaders, and I want to tell you, some of them have been so evil too in modern time. You think of King Leopold of Belgium, was a disaster for his people. We are also told there are at least 40 dictators around the world today. 40. And about 1.9 billion people live under the grip of 23 autocrats, oppressing poor people and making life difficult for them. That is what the fall in Eden is producing today in terms of governance. They have been a menace in their governing of people or leading people. Many of them have been murderers and torturers and persecutors and terrorizers and corruptors. If you want to use that word, I don't even know if that exists. They live like kings, as their name suggests. But they all die the same death. While many of their countrymen die from hunger and malnutrition and homelessness, lack of health care and clean water. And all they do, they squander money on their armies and to keep them in power and fatten their pockets with contracts with their friends. And their fellow men can't even find jobs to feed their families. Talk about man's rule. Talk about man's rule. And they tax you like never before. You have the Kim Jong-ils of North Korea. I call him a madman. People are starving in North Korea. You don't hear it in the news, but they're starving. And he has a taste for French liqueurs, or the high class want them. And he has pauperized his people. Famine runs rampant. We have another maniac in Sudan, Omar Hassan al-Bashir, power crazy zealot. Sudan has been in grips of war going on, and all they do, they build up the army. 21 years in power. What has he done? We've had some really, really bad ones over the years, whether it's the Klubai clan or the Genghis Khan or the Mao Zedong or the Ferdinand Marcos, Joseph Stalin and the Pol Pots, Napoleon Bonaparte. Hear all these names that they just, when people hear them, they think of some celebrity type business, but they're devilish. What have they done for their people? And sometimes, brethren, they started out good, Sometimes they started out, humble. And then they start taking on more power and more power. And then it becomes a situation where the absolute power corrupts absolutely. I remember this man, Robert Mugabe, a liberation hero in the struggle for independence. He was seen as a hero. Well, today some people still see him as a hero. But when inflation under his rule reached 1 billion%, you have a $500 million note that can't buy a bread. And people are starving, and 30 years in power, what has it produced? What has it produced? The country of 80% unemployment rather, and people running away from economies. Look at the refugee problems today. I see a picture with New York City, and you cannot believe a whole street, people sleeping on the street, they're all refugees, running. Running from what? From their oppressors. And they come in another country where there's more oppression too. So everywhere you turn, back home would say Makajukio. Everywhere you turn, there's something to bother you. Not so nice. I remember one of the oldest and cruelest leaders, tyrants I should say. And there's a very interesting series on Netflix on Rome. Caligula, remember that name? Or Caligula. That one was terrible. And he came into power in like around 40, 50 AD, shortly after Christ's ascension. And the things that he did started off nice again too. But he became a maniac. Extravagance. Got his sister pregnant. I'll tell you some stuff. So they go way back, way back. He raped women, killed people, made his horse a priest. Because, you know, when they feel they're gods, because some of these emperors were seen as gods. They can do anything. That is man's rule. There was another one called Ivan the Terrible. And that name suits him. Because he was terrible. The Grand Prince of Moscow and later the Tsar of the Russians during the mid-16th century. He did some brutal things. Can't even list them now and stop today. So we can see what is building up, that earth needs a rightful ruler. Because everybody has failed. Whether it's the liberal conservatives, whether it's Trump or Biden, a whole bunch of failures. Some people will say, well, you know, there's a little evil everywhere. I mean, there's a little good in some of the evil, but you know what? Evil is evil. So we have established systems like democracy, nice sounding, republics, the monarchies, the dictatorships, the communism, the capitalism, the nationalism, the socialism. And guess what? All of them fail. I wonder which other ism is out there. Which other ism is out there? We are told of some, you know, every year, and I think it still does it, the United Nations put out what is called a human something index of the best countries in the world to live. And our country, Canada, has made the list quite often as the best place to live in the world. And they judge it by things like employment and, you know, general standard of living and crime and jobs and so on. And Canada, the last one I saw, Canada was, I think either number 1 or number 2, but it has held the number 1 position for a while. So we have the countries like Denmark and Sweden and Norway, Switzerland, Australia, Finland, and so on, based on quality of life. But I tell you, each and every one of these countries, if you go in the background and you check out some of what is happening, you have people sleeping on streets too. And you have homeless people too. So what's the best? Well, in a sense, probably they're better than other, the standard may be better than other countries. Like there are some crime-ridden countries they never go near. So you maybe can sleep in peace. But it's happening all around. So we can see from this that there's a ruler that has to come. That's what we're going to celebrate next week when we come together to blow the trumpet and sound the alarm in Zion and to tell people to rise up out of your transgressions and hear the words of Yahweh. Genesis 17:16 shows us the real purpose of this king who was born. It says, and I will bless her, Sarai, and give thee a son of her, yea, and I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations, and kings of people shall be of her. A prophecy begins here from Genesis 17. And if we jump to Matthew 1, we look at the lineage of this king, the book of the generations of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In verse 16, it says, Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom is born Jesus, who is called Christ. So we know that Joseph and Mary were from royal lineage. But we have royal lineage too. We are royal priesthood. That's what we are called. And we're going to be kings and queens and priests and so on. But here we see that one was born of a very meek king, a very poor king, if you please, because he came as a lamb, as a meek lamb, coming back as a conquering king. But he was born in very poor conditions. Some say a stable. Others have reason to believe it was a cave outside the city. Whatever, the surroundings were poor. Didn't have anyone, big doctors attending to him and all of that. But he was born a king. Normally when you're born, you become a prince first in a lot of cases. But he was born a king. Luke 1:26 gives us a peek of what actually transpired at this time during the birth of Christ. Luke 1:26 says, and in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city in Galilee named Nazareth to a virgin exposed to a man named Joseph of the house of David, and her name was Mary. And he came unto her and said, Hail, highly favored, the Lord is with thee, blessed art thou amongst women. And when she saw him, she was troubled at his saying, and it cast into her mind what manner of salutation this should be. And the angel of the Lord said to Mary, Fear not, for thou hast found favor with God, and behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb and bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus. Yeshua. He shall be great. This is no ordinary person. He shall be called the Son of the Highest. And the Lord God shall give unto him the throne of his father David. This is not a physical throne. And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever. So we know that kings, yes, are succeeded by their heirs, but this king was to reign forever. Because it said, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. This is a special king. This is a special ruler. Remember the question from the wise men? Where is he that is born king of the Jews? Where? Matthew 2:1 says, but when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east, saying, Where is he that is born king of the Jews? Behold, we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. Where these wise men, how they knew that? The speculation is that when Daniel was taken captive, he knew from the prophets that there was one to come. At least Deuteronomy tells us about that prophet. And so Daniel might have relayed the story to them. So when the time came, they knew, because these wise men were taught to be astrologers. And they studied the stars, and they knew things, and they knew seasons, and so on. So, but kings have been born before him, but not this special one. Isaiah 9, you know the prophecy again, that this king, unto us a child is born, verse 6. Unto us a son is given, government shall be upon his shoulders. The government shall be upon his shoulders. That's the key in there. He shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government, there shall be no end. So it's an expanding, it's a very key prophetic statement here. It's an expanding government that is coming upon the earth. So with all this Christmas blah, 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 we don't hear about this kingly character, this leader, this ruler that is coming to oversee the kingdoms of all men. 2 Samuel 7 points out that there are a number of prophecies pointing to this kingship, this leader, this ruler. And in verse 12 it says, And when thy days be fulfilled, thou shalt sleep with thy fathers. Talking about David. I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I, this is Yahweh speaking, I will establish this kingdom. I will establish it. And when he says it's going to do it, he's going to do it. Jeremiah 23:5 again, another link to this prophecy. Behold, the days come, says the Lord, I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king will reign and prosper and execute judgment on the earth. See, look what's going on in the society of ours. You know, we see one disaster after the other, failures of government, just keep going. People vote this one in. By next time they have to vote them out, bring them back, come again, test them, and then vote them back out, and then vote them back in. New faces, same policy. It's a whole tired set of rulers. No new initiative, and even if a new initiative comes up, they are not of God. They are all secular. And they cannot, from the moment they're secular, they will fail. Daniel 2:44, in the days of this king, this ruler, shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. We know it will be for the saints of God. For the saints, that's who? So, Prime Minister, wherever you are, you have to give up your position. President, wherever you are, you have to give up your position. We don't have to take it from you. You just have to surrender to the power and might and wrath of God. You know, you read about these coups in these countries, military overthrow government, and they have to kill people to get them out of office and lock up people in prison and all of that. This is not going to happen with King Jesus. Just one announcement, Revelation 11:15. And all these kingdoms now transferred into the kingdom of our God. Feast of Trumpets tells us that story. Zechariah 6:12. All the way from the Old Testament, we see these things set out already. And we see partial fulfillment when Jesus came on the first advent. So we're on the final leg now. That's where we are. You ever see those 400 meters and these relay races running, and when they catch the final leg, and this is it now. Everybody say, yeah, it's the final leg. No more transferring of the baton. So we're in the final leg now. Final leg. And Zechariah 6:12 says, and speak unto him, saying, thus speak the Lord of hosts, saying, behold, the man whose name is the branch, he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon this throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the counsel of peace shall be between them both. So we see Christ a branch and a vision of the future of humanity with this ruler. This ruler. Talking about peace. He talks about peace, counsel of peace. We live in a land where there's no peace, just warmongers. And so many leaders who are in the warmongers category, they don't like peace, they just want to fight war. Build more weapons, get more contract for military companies, and build more, fight the war that when all you shell everybody and drop bombs all over everybody, then we can build more. We can keep the economy going. That's how rulers think, you know. It's a vicious cycle. But Christ tells us before his departure to take up his position on the Father's heavenly throne. He says, my peace I leave with you. And he's coming back to establish that peace. Did Jesus ever admit to being any kind of leader or a king? John 8:37, Pilate said, therefore, said unto him, are you a king? Then Jesus said, you rightly say I am a king. For this cause I was born. And for this cause I am come into this world, that I should be a witness to truth. What is truth? His word. Not the traditions of men and the words of men. His word. In Hebrews 1:2, this king has been appointed heir of all things by none other than God the Father. Is it any wonder that the gospel is about the kingdom? Jesus Christ and his coming kingdom, and the setting up of this kingdom and how he'll establish it. That's why we have the Feast of Tabernacles, to remind us what that is. No tyrants will be there. They can't. They can't. So let's consider Jerusalem, a very busy place, as usual. Very busy. Back in the days, Jerusalem was like at the center of the universe. It was a busy place. Apart from the Romish business that was going on, it was central, it was multicultural. A lot of different nations would come into Jerusalem. Busy. But it's a season of Passover. And there's a figure who enters the city. Very meek figure. Didn't come in on a limousine. Right? And what we're seeing here is that this entry into Jerusalem is a forerunner or precursor of this prophecy of this eternal kingdom with its ruler coming in. So he came into the old Jerusalem in meekness and humility. But one day we're going to see the opposite, where he's going to come to establish a new Jerusalem in power and glory. Very rich in typology here. Matthew 21, everything works out so perfectly, so rich and colorful about what's coming. Verse 1 says, and when they drew near unto Jerusalem, and were come unto the Mount of Olives, then said Jesus unto them, go into the village over against you, and straightway you will find a donkey tied with a colt with her. Loose them, bring them to me. And if any man says to you, you shall, say something to you about that, then you shall say, the Lord has need of them, and straightway he will send them. And all this was done, and that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, saying, tell your daughters of Zion, behold, your king comes unto thee meek, and sitting on a donkey and a colt. That's a prophecy from the Old Testament. He's not coming in a Lamborghini. He's coming on a donkey. Royalty, though, still royalty. He wasn't coming in the flesh or coming in the glorified state, on a white horse and so on. He's recognized by some as someone with some kind of adoration or some kind of authority from above, not on this earth. So John tells us that when he enters the city, everybody's chanting. Everybody's chanting around the area. They're saying, Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And this is not a new phrase. It's from Psalm 118:26. It was prophesied that it would happen this way. And so they're chanting, blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. They were shouting. Matthew 21:9 tells us that the messianic title of the son of King David he used to show that the crowd had acknowledged him as king, because they use the term Hosanna. And David used it back in the psalm. So, it's a Hebrew word, means greetings or shout of praise. 2 Samuel 14, 4, and I don't think I'll read it, but 2 Samuel 14:4 and 2 Kings 6:26, we see that this form of Hebrew word are used to address kings alone. So we see Jesus took it here. But back to John 12:13, they took branches out of palm trees. That's why you hear this thing about Palm Sunday. Right? Palm Sunday. Go and celebrate the Passover. You know, the mainstream like to attach a name to these things. So they took branches out of palm trees and went forward to meet him and cried, Hosanna, blessed is the King of Israel that is come in the name of the Lord. And so Jesus sat on a young donkey, as it is written, Fear not, daughter of Zion, thy king comes, sitting on a donkey. These things understood not his disciples at first, but when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things were written. And in Zephaniah 3:15, another prophecy says, The Lord, the King of Israel, is with you, and never again will you fear any harm, but the king in his flesh must die. The king in his flesh must die. God in the flesh must die, because that is why he came, the incarnate one, the Emmanuel, after the order of Melchizedek, the pre-incarnate Christ. But then he must die. So we go to another phase to see how this ruler, who's preparing for the final lap, that these things must be in place, or must have been in place before he could come again. So we see how it's going to all play out here. So he's going to take control eventually. We know that. But Matthew 21:12 says, Matthew 21:12, Jesus entered the temple, you remember, and he ran out everybody. The exchanging money, the gambling, they're out of order. Got the temple of God, and they're selling all kind of wares in there. Hustlers. You still see them around, selling all kind of stuff. Trade, selling birds, and maybe trading, selling doves. And the place is noisy like a market scene. No wonder he was angry and he overturned the tables. But there's some significance to that. It is his house of prayer. Yeah, it is his house of prayer. Remember what he said in Isaiah 56:7? My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you are making it robbers' den. So that was a prophecy that was fulfilled when he came. My house. It is this temple. The king is concerned. This ruler is concerned about his abode. Still concerned about it today, but he knows and allows certain things have to happen. But his future rulership, in that he's going to marry the body, in a sense, the temple, the church, when he returns. So Isaiah is speaking about this coming kingdom, because he even says, them will I bring to my holy mountain, government, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. So we see the analogy between the temple and the kingdom, that Jesus being the king over all of it, that he is holy, and he said, I am holy. We are to be holy as he is holy. So brethren, despite all of what we have gone through under oppressive governments, and will continue to go through, do not lose heart. It's part of the package. It's part of the package. But this package is going to deliver. Just like how you buy on Amazon and the package come in tomorrow. They deliver. Yeah. This package is going to be delivered to us in the blinking of an eye, the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, the flash of a second. Men like Moses, who died thousands of years ago, are going to say, but I just fell asleep. That's what they're going to say. So we'll be in a new age, and king and the earth's rightful ruler will rule all of us with justice and equity. So all those social issues that bother us sometime and tease us and annoy us, they will continue. Because it's only divine, there's only a divine answer to it because of the how, as human beings, how we behave, and we just fall short. Basically, we just fall short. We are going to see the King in his glory and splendor. And what more could we live for? Well, John 11:53, the news is spreading about his entry into Jerusalem. And at the same time, they are trying to kill him. Because some were conspiring that we have to get the Pharisees and all those are leaders to their establishment. Said, no, we have to get rid of this man. He's stepping on our corn. We have to get rid of him. He's getting more followers than us. The attention is on him. We have to do something. So after a series of events, the king is finally arrested and put on trial to fulfill what has to be done. John 18:33. So, the Roman ruler Pilate presented Jesus to the Jews, and he said in a mocking way, behold your king. Behold your king. Mocking way. Wasn't sincere. It's a mockery. And John 19:14, or John 18:33, the dialogue between Jesus and Pilate is rather interesting because Pilate wanted, they entered the judgment hall. He had a judgment hall there, and he called Jesus, summoned him. Art thou king of the Jews? Because he felt threatened too. And Jesus said, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered thee unto me. What have you done? Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. You realize how powerful this is? That my kingdom is not of this world. If you are citizens of the kingdom, we have to, if you haven't as yet, you have to place it in your mind because of what's going on around us. That we are not of this world. The kingdom that we are looking for cannot be of this world with whatever is going on. Can't be. If my kingdom were of this world, then why would my servants fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews? But now is my kingdom not from hence. And Pilate said to him, are you a king? Jesus said, I am a king. To this end was I born, and for this cause I came into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth hears my voice. So the people denied that he was a king, and they mocked him, and the leaders did too. Yet this was the very experience he had to endure to assume rulership. The Pharisees wanted to change his title. Even that. Pilate said, what I've written is written. Fulfilling a prophecy too. Poor Pilate. That's all I can say. Poor Pilate. Didn't know that there was a power higher than him. So he was crucified. He finally died. And we have a dead king. We have a dead ruler. But how can a ruler be dead? There are some rulers who have died, and their policies still influence people today. The Marxists and so on. But he's just dead. Some people say, well, probably he was just half asleep. No, he was dead. Dead, 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 dead. But before he had died, he had said that it is finished. it's finished. And so after that, he realized that whatever the Father's will, it had to be done. So later on, he was able to pray for the glory he had with him before the world was. And we know that on that day, he went to his Father, and when he returned, he was able to go through doors because he was glorified. He was glorified. He received that crowning glory of rulership because he had overcome sin, and all the trials were before him are now behind him. So here we are on September 9th, 2023, still waiting now for the final leg of the race. We are waiting for our rightful ruler to take up his position. And some of us, all of us, are going to be rewarded. Some of us are going to get big positions free of corruption. Some of us may get just smaller positions because of our labors, our laboring for Christ. Many have been laboring for years, have grown weary and tired. You read in the New Testament, and you see some of those burning out people after laboring for years, but they know the reward was coming. Paul used the Olympics in Rome to remind them about the race that was set before them. And brethren, we have to be careful as we go on, we get worn out. And sometimes the mind starts to work wonders, the brain. Because the brain is really a complex computer, if you want to use that. Because nowadays I've heard some stories of people who have been in the faith for a long while. When I say long, over 50, 60 years. And I don't know if they're getting senile or what. But some of the things coming from their thoughts is as if they want to give up on God. After all these years. Look at Sister Sheila. A stalwart in the faith, and she's still holding on. I was in Kitchener last week and I saw Sister Eileen, another stalwart in her 90s. She was holding on. She's a really inspirational example to all of us. But some of us are going to lose faith when the time gets to us. I hope nobody in this room, I hope nobody that I know, or nobody for that matter in the body of Christ, because we can get worn out by our social environment. And some of us, we live alone, it's hard. Some have lost, the other half becomes lonely. There's this lady up in Kawata Lakes, Violet Campbell, pray for her. Because when I saw her the last time, she's with stage 4 cancer. Doctors only give her weeks to live. And even on her bed, she may not rise from that bed. She can, through the power of God, but she may not. And she was witnessing for Christ on her bed. Such an inspiration. And she felt, even when I saw her, that God's going to heal her. That's how much faith she has. But she has resorted now to a situation where she said, even if God doesn't heal her, she's ready. She's ready. I don't know how many of us have that opportunity to say that, to tell God we're ready. We're just waiting. I remember Francisco years ago. Some of you know Francisco. Maybe the only man I've ever seen so far who was hoping to die. He says he's ready. You go and visit him and he says he's ready. Can't wait. That's what he told me one Saturday. I can't wait. Because the next time I wake up, I know I'll see glory. So as we approach this Feast of Trumpets, coming of Messiah, don't let this sin-sick world wear you out. Earth's rightful ruler sits on his throne, and he's coming, and we know what is going to happen. We see in a brief here all of what transpired before and why he had to come. And he told us he's coming, and he can't lie. And so, men and brethren, Peter said on the day of Pentecost, Acts 2:29, let me tell you freely unto you this patriarch David that is both dead and buried, and his sepulchre is with us today. Therefore, being a prophet and knowing that God had sworn with an oath, this is serious, that of the fruit of his loins, according to the flesh, that he would raise up Christ and set him on his throne. This is what Peter was echoing across the audience on the day of Pentecost, that God made an oath he's going to raise up this leader, this ruler. And so the spiritual reign of this ruler takes on new meaning when he comes. After his ascension, the message went out. It echoed wide across, beginning at Jerusalem, and it has been going to the uttermost part of the earth since then. How much more time do we have? We don't know. We don't know. But you remember your calling for sure. In Acts 2:5 it says, listen, my beloved, has not God chosen the poor of the world, rich in faith, and heirs of the kingdom which he has promised to them that love him? Poor people. Poor people. James speaks of the poor of this world that God has chosen. 1 Timothy 6:15 also, which in his time he shall show who is the blessed and only potentate, the King of kings and the Lord of lords. That is who we are dealing with. That is the ruler we are addressing, not some 6-star general who is corrupt and throw on his weight. Matthew 25:31 says, when the Son of Man shall come in all his glory, and all the holy angels with him, and he shall sit up on the throne of his glory. Yes, glorified. Before him he shall gather all the nations, all of them, all of those leaders, the same one who are going to run and say, hide us from the face of the one who sits on the throne, hide us from his wrath. We don't want to see him. We are going down in our bunkers to try to hide, but, or the mountains fall on us. He's coming. He is coming. The King is coming. And he shall gather all nations, not just one. Everybody, black, pink, blue, everybody he's going to gather. This humble king was born in humble surroundings. Cleanse the temple of the corruption, cleansing it in preparation for this future kingdom that he will establish. Earth's rightful ruler is coming. That's our message as we go into the feast, fall festival, the Feast of Trumpet, Day of Atonement. The voices are going to roar like thunder when those seals open and they come to a close. 1 Corinthians 15:24 tells us, then comes the end when he shall have delivered the kingdom of God even to the Father, when he shall have put down all rule and all authority. That's why we're told in Revelation 22, and John saw the vision of the kingdom coming down to earth. He's going to deliver it to the Father. He's going to deliver it to the Father because he has accomplished all what he set out to do. 1 Peter 2:17. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear the eternal, but honor your king, your leader. Isaiah 32:1 says, behold, the king shall reign in righteousness, and princes shall rule in judgment. He's going to rule in judgment. I like this one so much. Isaiah 33:17. Thine eyes shall see the king. Our eyes. Not this physical eyes though, because we can't see him in his glory in the flesh. But our eyes shall see the king in his beauty, and they shall behold the land that is far off. We shall see the king. Rough times, yes. Nighttime you're on your pillow tossing and turning and you can't even sleep because of your trials. It's become a ritual for many people. You know, I was talking to my doctor recently, and he asked me, how do I sleep? If I sleep well, and I say, you know, I have a chronic sleep problem from working night shift back in the days, you know, and since that time I haven't been able to sleep well. I must say since retirement this has improved, but you know, he has always been asking me about my sleep problems, and he said, you know what, I would be shocked to know how many people in this city can't sleep at night. That's what he said to me, because he sees them. He says more than half of the city don't sleep at night because, you know, I asked him, why would he think? He said, a lot of trials. People just have trials. And you know, when you go on your pillow and you have a lot of thoughts in your head, you can't sleep. I found out that. So free your mind of thoughts and you fall asleep. Anyhow, you go to your bed and you think about this, oh, I'm going to do this tomorrow, I'm going to do this next week, you will not sleep or take a long time to sleep. Because you're thinking. And some things just stuck in your head and can't come out. Whether it's a hymn that you're practicing, you go to bed practicing and you wake up next morning, you're still singing the song. All of us go through some kind of ritual like this. But that is going to change. Imagine the new city of Jerusalem with all those precious stones. That is going to greet our eyes. Yes, it's going to change because the king is coming, Isaiah 33:22. For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king, and he will save us. Nobody else in this planet can save us. No, not one. Isaiah 43:15. I am Yahweh, your Holy One, the creator of all nations, your king. Isaiah 44:6 says, thus saith the Lord, the King of Israel and his Redeemer, and the Lord of hosts, I am the first, I am the last. Beside me, there is no other God. So, brethren, let's not waste our time. Let's not, some of those who have become weary and tired are now looking at other gods. For what? For what? And the worst thing is that these gods are all dead or inanimate. They never even exist. That's the worst thing, you know. You're looking at other gods. And they're mortals like you who are going to dead and rotten like you. And you're looking to them for some kind of, you know, deliverance. Zechariah 14 says, and the Lord shall be king. He shall be ruler over all the earth. All the earth. And Revelation 22, it says, 16, I am the root, the offspring of David. So we see the prophecy coming into fulfillment here again. The bright and morning star, although Lucifer wants to claim this title. The bright and morning star. What more, brethren? So I just want to declare to all of us today as we go into the Feast of Trumpets, behold your king, earth's rightful ruler. He's coming. We're on the last ready to meet him. Amen.